Welcome to the module, High Yield Strategies for Teaching High School English Language Arts. We value your time and appreciate your active participation during this module. Here are a few suggested learning norms to make the most of your time. If possible, work in an environment with as few distractions as possible so you can engage and reflect. Take notes and jot down ideas and questions as needed. And lastly, use this time wisely to ensure your professional learning with university instructors is productive. The agenda for this module is learning objectives, strategies for teaching reading comprehension, strategies for teaching writing, best practices, and a final reflection. By the end of this module, participants will be able to identify effective research-based instructional strategies for teaching reading comprehension in the high school classroom, and identify effective research-based instructional strategies for teaching writing in the high school classroom. It is not unusual for secondary students to struggle with reading comprehension because the texts, especially nonfiction, become more complex as they advance in grades. Combine that with a lack of background knowledge and vocabulary for many of the nonfiction topics being learned, and you have students who struggle to understand what they read. That's why it's so important to teach them strategies for unpacking and analyzing what they read, especially informational texts. In this section, we'll explore reading strategies that can help students not only understand what they read, but also think more deeply about texts. As high schoolers, the types of texts students encounter, whether fiction, nonfiction, or literary analysis, require more than just surface-level reading. You may remember a time when you struggled to understand a nonfiction text because of the lack of background knowledge. Maybe you overcame that by doing some research, reading other texts on the subject, or using context clues. We can help our students do the same by teaching them a variety of strategies, including annotations. Annotations are a close reading strategy that allows students to interact with the text as they read. This can be done using a variety of approaches, including PNQR, illustrations, and collaboration. Let's first learn about PNQR. This is an annotation strategy for students to use the first time they read a text. Before asking students to complete a PNQR, it will be essential that you model this strategy by speaking your own thinking out loud for them to hear and follow. Consider using prompts such as "I notice" or "I wonder." Once they understand the how and why of annotations, then they can complete them on their own. When students finish the PNQR strategy with their first reading of the text, then you can use their thoughts, understandings, and most importantly, identified gaps to inform your instructional approach, such as finding information to fill in background knowledge that may be lacking or building content-specific vocabulary. Students can also annotate by drawing, sketching, or creating visual representations of their thoughts, questions, and wonderings. Contrary to what students may think, they do not need to be good at art to engage with the text in this way. Any illustrations that represent their own thinking are helpful in building their comprehension and identifying gaps. Finally, students can collaborate on their annotations, thus expanding their perspectives or finding similarities, or possibly raising more questions than they originally had, which is great. The collaboration can be led by the instructor who provides guiding questions or left to the students to lead their own. Technology tools available in software programs such as Google Docs and Microsoft Word allow students to share documents and respond to one another. They can post their own annotations while responding to others, which creates an ongoing dialogue about the text. Let's apply what we've learned so far to a real-world classroom scenario. Your American Lit students are struggling to comprehend informational texts. They are going to read A Farewell to Arms, but you first want to build their background knowledge of Italy's role in World War I. You found an article detailing the Italian perspective during the war. So how can you use annotations to help students understand this nonfiction text? You can provide the article before students start reading the book to build their background knowledge. Using the PNQR strategy during the initial reading of the article will allow you to learn what students are thinking and any gaps that may exist in their understanding of the text. This could inform instructional decisions as to whether they are ready to start reading a novel or need additional information and/or vocabulary prior to beginning. You could also provide the article as they are reading the novel and allow them to annotate using illustrations for independent work or collaboration to learn from others and identify any gaps that still exist in comprehension. Either way, students are engaging with the text and increasing their comprehension skills. Now we will dive into strategies for teaching reading comprehension with a specific focus on active reading. Reading comprehension is more than just understanding words on a page. It's about making meaning, making connections, and thinking critically. Active reading is another way to help students engage with text and comprehend what they read. By employing strategies before reading, during reading, and after reading, students can deepen their comprehension. Our goal in high school isn't just to get through the text. It's to help students become strategic readers. That means they learn how to approach a challenging passage, what to do when they're confused, and how to pull meaning and evidence from the text. We're going to look at strategies in 3 phases: before reading, to activate background knowledge and build readiness; during reading, to support active thinking and comprehension; and after reading, to encourage reflection, analysis, and synthesis of ideas. Each strategy can be adapted based on student need, reading level, or a specific text. Whether we're reading Shakespeare, analyzing an editorial, or studying a novel, these tools help students take ownership of the reading process and develop the critical thinking skills they'll need far beyond ELA class. As with any strategy, you should model each one first so students can understand what implementation looks like. As we introduce reading strategies, we want to give students the tools to approach text with purpose and confidence. To ready students to read, we start by activating their background or prior knowledge. KWL charts are a quick, structured way to help them reflect on what they already know, what they want to learn, and eventually, what they did learn. We also encourage students to predict connections to their own experiences, other texts, or the world around them. This makes the reading feel more relevant and helps them engage more deeply with the content. Another pre-reading strategy includes setting a purpose for reading so that students can actively engage with the text once they begin. Questions for setting purpose may include, why am I reading, or what is my task? We might establish the purpose for reading as finding examples of the writer's tone, tracing the author's argument, or analyzing a character's development. An example purpose for reading statement might be, as you read the next act in Hamlet, describe the relationship between the protagonist and antagonist. Or, as you read the editorial, identify text evidence that supports the author's opinion. Additionally, we can teach them to preview text features prior to reading, like headings, bolded words, or images, to build context, comprehension, and make predictions. This also helps align the text with the purpose for reading. Let's quickly reflect on a high school classroom example that describes a possible classroom scenario. Before passing out a nonfiction article, you tell students to read the article, take notes, and be prepared to answer questions about the author's point of view. After giving students 15 minutes to read the article, you distribute the questions and give students time to complete them. Several had questions about what they were supposed to be doing, how to find answers, and what the article was describing. After collecting and grading the questions, you realized that most students did not respond with evidence from the article to support the author's point of view, even though that's what you were asking, and several didn't answer the questions at all. What before reading strategies could the instructor have used to assist students with analyzing the article? Let's quickly reflect on a high school classroom example that illustrates both setting a purpose for reading and previewing text features. Before assigning a nonfiction article on climate, the teacher tells students, "As you read, I want you to focus on how the author presents evidence to support their argument. That's our purpose for reading today." Then the class previews the text together, examining the title, subheadings, and a chart in the middle of the article. The teacher says, "Notice the subheadings, rising temperatures, and economic impact." These hint at the types of evidence we'll see. That chart might also help us evaluate the author's argument. Keep that in mind as you read. How does setting a clear purpose for reading and previewing text features help students engage more critically with informational texts? Before asking students to read and analyze the article, the instructor could have used several before reading strategies to set them up for success, as seen in the second classroom example. First, setting a clear purpose. Instead of just telling students to read and take notes, the teacher could have stated the goal more explicitly, such as you read, look for the author's point of view and be ready to cite specific evidence to support it. They also had another example in classroom example number 2, and a clear purpose helps students focus their reading. For number 2, activate prior knowledge. Asking students what they already know about the topic or related issues would have helped them make personal and academic connections to the text before diving in. Previewing text features is when the teacher could have walked students through the title, headings, captions, and any visuals, such as classroom example number 2. Pre-teach vocabulary. Identifying and discussing challenging or content-specific words for reading can remove barriers to comprehension, especially for struggling readers or English learners. Provide focus questions. Giving students the questions ahead of time or creating a guiding worksheet would have helped them read with a purpose and know exactly what to look for. Model or think aloud the first paragraph. The instructor could have read and annotated the first paragraph aloud, modeling how to identify the author's tone, evidence, or argument. This strategy demonstrates what effective reading and analysis looks like. To support comprehension, we can pre-teach key vocabulary before reading, especially academic language that students will see across subjects and subject-specific terms unique to the text. We don't just give definitions, however. Instead, we use context clues, create word maps, and provide student-friendly explanations. This helps students internalize the meaning and apply it as they read, rather than getting stuck on or skipping unfamiliar language that is essential for building comprehension. Here's a high school classroom example that illustrates the concept of front-loading with a focus on academic language and subject-specific terms. Before reading Of Mice and Men, the teacher introduces key academic terms like foreshadowing, migrant worker, and American dream. Using a word map on the board, students define foreshadowing in student-friendly language, identify context clues in example sentences, and sketch a quick visual. The teacher says, "You'll see this term show up in a lot of our discussions, so let's make sure we know exactly what it means and how to identify it in the text." How does front-loading academic language support students' comprehension and confidence when reading complex texts? Front-loading academic language is a powerful strategy in high school ELA because it prepares students to encounter challenging vocabulary and concepts before they dive into the text. When students understand subject-specific terms ahead of time, they're less likely to get stuck or frustrated. Using tools like word maps and student-friendly definitions makes the language more accessible and helps students internalize new words by connecting meaning, context, and visuals. This scaffolding builds their confidence and improves comprehension, especially with complex or unfamiliar texts. By intentionally focusing on key terms before reading, teachers give students a stronger foundation to engage deeply with the material and participate in richer discussions. Otherwise, they may skip unfamiliar language when reading, which potentially leads them to missing important context, ideas, or analysis relevant to the purpose of the text. Just as with before reading approaches, instructors need to use structured strategies during reading that promote active thinking. Some of these practices include close reading, think alouds, organizers, and reciprocal teaching. As with all strategies, explicitly model effective use of it before asking students to implement. Let's look at each in more detail. Earlier in this module, we learned about annotations, also known as close reading strategies, that help students engage with the text. Based on their thoughts and wonderings captured in annotations, students can seek answers to their questions, or upon review of the student's annotations, the instructor can help them find answers to commonly asked questions or assist them with building background knowledge and vocabulary. Despite the use of annotations, students still may need to reread it based on the complexity of the text or the level of prior knowledge. Instructors can also chunk the text into smaller sections. With this approach, students read a short passage multiple times with a specific focus each time. The first read might just be for general understanding, the second for vocabulary or structure, and the third for deeper analysis like theme or tone. Regardless, the text is provided in similar sections to aid in comprehension at a scaffolded level. Another strategy is think alouds, where instructors model how skilled readers process texts. As an instructor reads a passage aloud, they pause to verbalize their thought processes. For example, I'm noticing this word is repeated. That might mean it's important, or I don't understand this sentence. Let me go back and reread. This shows students that confusion is normal and that good readers use strategies like rereading, predicting, or asking questions to make sense of difficult texts. This approach is powerful because it makes the invisible process of comprehension visible to students, and it helps them internalize those strategies when they read independently. In ELA classrooms, teachers often confuse think alouds with modeling, but understanding the difference is key to helping students develop deeper literacy skills. In this next video, we will watch a clip of a presentation showing the differences between modeling and think alouds. As you watch, note the differences between the two.
A think aloud is different than a model. And I think elementary knocks my socks off with this. Former secondary teacher, I didn't even know about these. It wasn't until I was coaching I really appreciated the power of a think aloud. Let me explain the difference between a think aloud and a model, because for some of us, we might be thinking we're doing a think aloud, but you're doing a model. It's not enough. If I was teaching a kid how to shoot a free throw, I could just model it. Okay, yeah, you're a form. Woo, we got to work on this. Let me show you. Okay, so you get to the free throw line, and this is a free throw. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. Got it? Okay, I'm modeling it. You getting it? Got it? Good. Your turn. Okay, nothing's really going to change about his thinking or his ability to do it. Let me switch that. This is a think aloud. Okay, so we're going to learn how to shoot a free throw. So the first thing I do when I come to the line is I look down. I'm right-handed, my right foot slightly in front of my left. That's not really obvious, but that is what's happening. Here's definitely what's not obvious. I'm leaning forward. You can't see that. Let me tell you, I'm leaning forward. I'm on the balls of my feet. I'm leaning forward. Now, let me tell you where I'm looking, because you can't tell. No, I'm not looking at the rim. You look at the rim and you're going to hit the rim. You don't look at the rim. You look up and over behind the rim. That's where I'm looking. All right, so I'm leaning forward. My knees are flexed. I'm looking up and over behind the rim. Now I'm just hold the ball. You don't need to spin it. You don't need to do it. Just hold the ball. All right? Hold the ball. I'm looking up and over the rim. I'm looking up and over the rim. I'm leaning forward. Now here's what I'm saying to myself. I'm thinking up, 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 snap. Up, 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 snap. Up, 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 snap. That's what I'm doing. Up, 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 snap. Okay, now I want you to do this. I want you to talk me through what you're thinking as you do it. That's a think aloud.
The educator did a great job showing the differences between modeling and a think aloud. We now see that think alouds involve saying out loud what you're thinking as you read or write. This could be questioning the author's choices, predicting what might happen next, or explaining why you're choosing a particular word or structure in your writing. The goal is to make your internal thinking visible so students can understand not just the actions, but the reasoning behind them. Modeling, on the other hand, is about showing students what to do. You might write a strong thesis statement on the board or read a text and highlight key ideas. But without explaining your thought process, it demonstrates the outcome, but doesn't always unpack the thinking behind it. The confusion happens when we model a task but assume students can infer our thinking. Without hearing the why, they may struggle to apply the strategy independently. Both approaches are valuable. Ideally, we want to pair them, model the skill, and then think aloud as we revisit it. So students get both the structure and the strategy. Both think alouds and modeling are essential in high school ELA classrooms because they work together to show students not only what strong reading and writing look like, but also how and why skilled readers and writers make strategic choices. Now, let's continue with our during reading strategies by looking at the effect of graphic organizers. Graphic organizers is yet another way of helping students visually organize what they're reading. For example, a character map allows students to track traits, motivations, and relationships in a visual representation. Similarly, a plot diagram outlines the structure of a narrative in a way that students can see what's happening in the text in case they are struggling with comprehending it with just words. A cause and effect chart helps with nonfiction or argument analysis, and that students can process what was read in the text and then diagram it on paper for an at-a-glance perspective. All these tools help students process information in a more accessible way, especially for visual learners or those who struggle to retain verbal or written information. They're also a helpful scaffold for writing, as students can later see their organizers to build paragraphs or essays. Reciprocal teaching is a collaborative reading strategy where students are placed in small groups and assigned one of 4 roles throughout which they will rotate. First, the summarizer explains what the text is about, then a questioner asks questions about confusing or interesting parts, the clarifier addresses tricky words or ideas, and the predictor guesses what might come next. The strategy builds comprehension and discussion skills while giving students structure and ownership of their learning. After reading comprehension strategies are just as important as before and during reading activities. This is where instructors assist students with engaging more deeply in a text using reflective practices, structured discussions, or analytical writing that allows students to process, interpret, and respond to the text in meaningful ways. Let's look at a few examples for accomplishing this. After reading, students need to reflect on their before reading and during reading notes to continue building comprehension, to determine any lingering questions, and to identify additional gaps in understanding. The teacher can provide prompts as necessary to guide the students' reflections, such as how it aligns to any predictions made, to the original purpose statement, or to any discoveries from the during reading activities. Another approach to after reading activities is to provide students with structured opportunities to talk about the text. Socratic seminars and literature circles are 2 ways to encourage discussion based on open-ended, text-based questions. The goal isn't to get the right answer, but to explore meaning and perspectives using evidence from the text. In Socratic seminars, for example, students respond to a central question and build on one another's ideas, while the teacher acts as a facilitator. In literature circles, students take on roles like discussion director or connector and lead peer-to-peer conversations. Both formats promote critical thinking, respectful discourse, and deeper engagement with complex text. Let's watch a Socratic seminar in action. As you watch the following video clip, consider how and when you might include this activity in your high school ELA classroom.
All right, so what we are going to be doing today is we are doing our Socratic seminar. Today we're going to be doing a Socratic seminar. We also call it a spiderweb discussion, as all of the kids' names are around the board, and when they begin to speak, I make dots and lines, making it look like a spider web. We are going to be discussing the book Displacement by Kiku Hughes. Previously, the kids have been given one driving question of what elements or facets are going to determine Kiku's identity and culture. Each kid knows that they have to speak 4 times over the course of the discussion, and they need to, as a group, collectively provide 10 quotes to support their evidence. You are speaking 4 times, and we need a total of 10 quotes. All right, do we have someone who wants to kick it off? Andrea, go for it.
How does the author purposely make Kiku stand out from the rest of the characters by using brightly colored clothing such as the green shirt?
I think an answer to this would be they want to differentiate her because she's from the future and she's obviously different from the rest of the internment camp people.
Every single table has been given a specific element to research of theme, motif, character development, and symbols. They're going to come in, they talk a bit with their partners of what they found overnight or in their homework or in class yesterday, and then they sit down and I begin to ask them one question. Our driving question is going to be, in what ways is Kiku impacted by her culture and identity? And then they are going to kind of continue to bounce off each other and bounce these ideas off of each other, have their quotes for evidence, and even add different layers or perspectives to what they have found and also what their peers have found for the subject. So I just ask one driving question, and this is really a student-focused activity. I stand back and make all my dots and lines, and I watch what they have to contribute to the class.
The color green, the bright colored green on her shirt represents hope and just her hope of getting out and her hope of finding her grandmother.
I want to go back to what Sarah was talking about before, about how Kiku sort of used the drawings in the camp as a way to cope. And I think the fact that she received a paintbrush at the end of everything shows that she finally found her true identity.
Her remembering what was happening in this displacement connects to the theme of the power of memory. And I actually have a quote for that as well that says, "I thought it must have been a dream, but it felt so real," and that was on page 21.
In the beginning of the year, we just start with a very mild form of this discussion where they just kind of talk about the plot points or the characters, what is a protagonist or an antagonist. And as we continue throughout the year, we just continue to add a little bit more and deeper elements. So it's not just a topical discussion, but rather what are the themes and how do we see these motifs? So in the beginning of the year, they're just giving me plot points, but now they can make those connections and add to the analysis of it.
She was sent to a strange place and a strange time, and I think that in a sense there's like a bond between them because of that. And Aiko was her first roommate, and they set up their room together, and I think that kind of makes like a trauma bond in a sense.
Which we've seen,
And
you know it. It's your favorite book.
Glass Castle.
Glass Castle, we see trauma bonds. Trauma bonds is going to be our motif. How do we turn that motif into a theme?
Developing a bond.
Development of trauma bonds. The way I assess the students is going to be very particular on a rubric. They are aware that they need to speak 4 times. They know that they have to have 10 quotes. So when they come in, they can't just piggyback and say, I agree with so-and-so, but rather they have to bring something new to the table. So they know that that will add as a point towards their final grade.
The topic of Ernestine being a symbol.
Yeah.
She wants to symbolize how Kiku's getting closer to her culture and her past as well. Throughout the course of the novel, she's also getting closer to her grandmother.
She keeps getting physically closer, but also all these other elements.
Going back to kind of what Julia and Dolly were talking about her relationship with her mother, and I have a quote for this. It's on page 22. It says, "Mom, what was Grandma's name?" Connecting back to the driving question, which is why Kiku might feel, what's the word for like far away? Disconnected from her culture and identity. Going off of what Adil said, we could see that her remembering what was happening in this displacement connects to the theme of the power of memory. And I actually have a quote for that as well that says, "I thought it must have been a dream, but it felt so real," and that was on page 21. Some advice or suggestions that I might have for a new teacher who's going to try this method is start small and continue to work your way up. Have that discussion with your kids to know where they are and use that as a barometer, but also trust them to know that you can kind of take a step back as a new teacher and not have that control for a full 40 minutes, but trust in your students that they are going to do the assessment the way they need to.
Student-led discussions, such as those just seen in the video, can be good catalysts for written responses to text. Writing after reading and speaking helps solidify comprehension and develop analytical thinking. Students can write journals, short constructed responses, or full essays, always grounding their ideas in textual evidence. Instructors can support student writing by providing sentence stems like the author suggests, this quote shows that, a symbol that appears is, which represents. These supports help students articulate their thoughts clearly and build strong arguments, especially when transitioning from discussion to writing. We have covered a lot of content, so let's take some time to reflect. What strategies can you use to prepare your students to engage with a new text? How will you help students stay active and thoughtful as they read? And what are effective ways for students to reflect on and respond to a text? Pause the video to jot down your thoughts at this time. With reading strategies in place, let's move forward and discuss strategies for teaching writing. When we talk about writing skills, we're referring to a person's ability to clearly express ideas through written language. This includes proper grammar, sentence structure, and organization. But writing isn't just about putting words on paper, it's a process. Students need to learn how to generate and organize ideas, revise their drafts to improve clarity or flow, and edit for grammar and accuracy. Strong writing allows students to communicate their thoughts, opinions, and arguments effectively, not just in English class, but in every academic subject and eventually in the workplace. Teaching writing is essential because it strengthens students' critical thinking by requiring them to organize ideas, make connections, and analyze information. It also deepens reading comprehension. When students write about what they read, they process text more thoughtfully. Beyond academics, writing prepares students for real-world communication, from emails to resumes, helping them express themselves clearly and professionally. Most importantly, writing gives students voice and agency, allowing them to share their perspectives, advocate for their beliefs, and engage meaningfully in the world around them. So what do we mean when we say writing skills? Writing skills encompass a variety of important abilities, from grammar and vocabulary to organization and audience awareness. Each skill plays a crucial role in helping students communicate their ideas clearly and effectively. Understanding these different types helps us better support students as they develop into confident writers. Let's visit each of these skills and consider how we might teach them in the classroom. Grammar and mechanics are the building blocks of writing. This includes punctuation, capitalization, spelling, and sentence structure. When students use these correctly, their writing becomes easier to read and more professional. It also prevents confusion for the reader and shows attention to detail. In high school, we want students to go beyond basic grammar rules and understand how grammar affects clarity and style. A mini workshop allows us to focus on specific issues like comma splices or sentence variety, using real writing examples. Then we give students opportunities to apply those skills by revising their own work, ideally using checklists or online tools to self-assess. It's not just about correction, it's about understanding how grammar shapes effective communication. What's most important about teaching grammar is to do so in context, as opposed to providing grammar worksheets or teaching grammar rules as a warm-up. Reviewing grammar rules is fine, but only if they are immediately applied to a student's piece of writing or modeled in an actual text. Word choice impacts how clearly and effectively ideas are communicated. We want students to use precise, meaningful words that fit into the context, whether that means academic language in an essay or descriptive language in a narrative. Strong vocabulary keeps writing engaging and accurate. At this level, we want students to make intentional choices with their language. Analyzing diction in literature, speeches, or journalism helps them see how word choice impacts meaning, tone, and mood. We then ask students to revise their own writing, swapping vague or repetitive language for stronger, more precise words that better fit the tone or task. This helps them move toward more academic and purposeful writing. Organized writing helps guide the reader. Students need to know how to create a clear introduction, develop body paragraphs with supporting details, and end with a conclusion that ties it all together. Transitions between ideas are also key for making writing flow smoothly. Students often write before outlining or mapping what they want to write and in what order, which can lead to disorganized essays. Reverse outlining is a powerful tool that helps students check their structured writing. They start with a long, rambling, unorganized slew of text first. So in other words, they write the messy and chaotic first draft without worrying too much about structure. Then they go through the piece and for every paragraph write a single sentence that summarizes it. This practice shows whether each paragraph supports the thesis and transitions smoothly. We can also model pre-writing with graphic organizers to help students build strong, coherent body paragraphs with topic sentences and evidence. These tools give them a clear framework from which to expand their writing. Good writing gets to the point. It's concise. We teach students to avoid unnecessary words or vague language. Instead, they should focus on being clear, direct, and intentional with every sentence. This skill is especially important in formal or persuasive writing. High school writers sometimes overcomplicate sentences, thinking that it makes their writing sound more sophisticated. Instead, we teach them to value clarity. In this activity, we give real, anonymous student examples and revise them together to reduce wordiness. Then, students revise their own work to make it tighter and clearer, focusing on precision, not fluff. Writing is a process, and revision is where students refine their work. This step involves looking at content. Are the ideas strong? Is the structure logical? Before moving into editing, where they fix grammar, punctuation, and word level issues. Both are essential. Writing is a process, and high school students need practice with meaningful revision, not just surface level editing. The 2-Draft Challenge helps students reflect on how their writing improves with focused feedback. Structured peer review with rubrics also gives students helpful, specific input. After revising, they write a reflection on what changed and why, and that's where the real growth happens. Understanding the audience helps students make smarter choices about tone, word choice, and detail. Writing for a teacher, a peer, or a wider public audience requires different strategies. We want students to think about who will read their work and adjust accordingly. Students often write the same way no matter who the audience is, a problem that has been compounded by text messages. This exercise shows them how word choice, tone, and structure should change depending on who they're addressing. By writing for 2 different audiences, a peer versus a principal, for example, they begin to understand the importance of tailoring their message. That's a skill they'll use in college, careers, and life. As we support students in developing their writing skills, a few key strategies stand out, starting with providing explicit guidance and encouraging dialogue around the writing process. First, every time we assign a writing task, we should reinforce the value of correct mechanics. This isn't about perfection, it's about helping students communicate clearly and effectively. To support this, we can model strong writing by creating and sharing exemplar pieces. These models show students what high-quality writing looks like in practice and give us an opportunity to highlight specific grammar or structural choices. At the same time, we need to make space for students to talk about their writing, whether through peer discussions, conferences, or whole class sharing. Giving students opportunities to verbalize their ideas helps them organize thoughts, clarify intentions, and engage more deeply with the writing process. When students can articulate what they're trying to say, they write with more purpose. Additionally, it's essential that we consistently show students we value good writing. This means going beyond just correcting errors. We want to emphasize thoughtful, purposeful writing, encourage them to write regularly, not just to complete assignments, but to build fluency. One of the most impactful ways to teach writing is to model it. Write in front of your students. As you do, narrate your thought process. Explain why you're choosing specific words, how you revise sentences, and where you pause to reflect. This helps students understand that writing is a process, not a one-and-done product. It also demystifies the craft and gives students insight into the strategies experienced writers use. Finally, make writing a regular part of your classroom routine. Don't reserve writing for just formal essays. Integrate quick writes, journaling, exit slips, and reflections. These in-class writing exercises lower the stakes and increase comfort with the process. Also, build in opportunities for peer feedback. When students read and analyze each other's writing, they gain new perspectives and begin to notice the strengths and areas of improvement in their own work. Let's once again apply what we've learned to a real-world scenario. You just finished grading the first set of expository essays for your 9th grade ELA class. Their writing is unorganized, the language mirrors that of a text message, and details to support their explanations are lacking. You need to improve their writing skills quickly, or they will struggle to pass the course as assignments and expectations grow increasingly more difficult. What strategies can you use to help students improve? You could use a reverse outline strategy to address the lack of organization students exhibit. This hopefully would allow them to see where their writing is out of sequence or illogical. An activity on audience can help with the informal text message language by having them write the same information as a text, and again, as if a formal invitation. Finally, using more detail is always a challenge with students, so continuing to model good writing is essential to building writing skills. For the final section of this module, we will review best practices for teaching reading and writing. As instructors, activating students' prior knowledge before reading helps them connect new ideas to what they already know, increasing engagement and comprehension. Setting a clear purpose for reading gives students direction and focus. Modeling active reading through think-alouds and annotations shows students how to interact with the text thoughtfully. Pre-teaching vocabulary ensures students aren't tripped up by unfamiliar words, which supports better understanding. Close reading encourages students to dig deeper into the author's language, structure, and meaning. Discussion and collaborative activities like Socratic seminars or literature circles promote critical thinking and allow students to hear multiple perspectives. Differentiating instruction with tools like graphic organizers or leveled text help meet diverse learner needs. Finally, formative assessments provide timely feedback that guides our instruction and supports student growth. To support strong writing development, it's important to model writing skills by thinking aloud. Incorporating regular, low-stakes writing opportunities such as quick writes or journals helps students build fluency and confidence without the pressure of grades. Providing clear and constructive feedback that highlights strengths and offers specific guidance for improvement fosters growth and encourages revision. Peer review and collaboration allows students to learn from one another, develop critical thinking, and improve communication. Differentiating instruction by using scaffolds like sentence starters, graphic organizers, or mentor text ensures all learners receive the support they need. Finally, connecting reading and writing deepens understanding of both by showing how ideas, structures, and language patterns transfer across disciplines. As we wrap up today's module, take a moment to reflect on your learning. First, think about which high-yield strategy you feel most confident implementing right away. Is it something you've used before with success, or maybe something new that feels like a natural fit for your teaching style or your students' needs? Of course, implementing any new strategy comes with challenges. What obstacles do you anticipate when trying to apply what you learned about teaching reading and writing? Is it time, resources, student readiness, or even your own comfort level? Consider how you might overcome those challenges. Maybe it's starting small, collaborating with a colleague, or adjusting the strategy to better fit your context. Feel free to pause the video and jot down your thoughts. This reflection is an important step towards intentional and effective instructional change. We hope you enjoyed this module on high yield strategies for teaching high school English language arts. Please complete the check for understanding and the survey included in the Google Classroom. Thank you, and we look forward to providing continued support for your professional growth at University Instructors.